We are live. How exciting. Well, welcome everybody to a panel about whether or not a hobby sim can teach you a job. My name is Peter Willington and I'm from Auroch Digital. I'll be representing Brewmaster and I'm running this panel for better or worse. I'm joined by some absolutely wonderful folks with me and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves and a little bit about what role they have at the company, which company they're from, and which game they're kind of generally going to be talking about, that kind of thing. So let me start. Let me start with you first, Kilian.
All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Kilian Schmitt, and I'm working as a game designer at Frontier Developments here in the UK. For the past 1.5 years or so, I've been working on Planet Zoo, which is our management zoo simulator title, which I'll be obviously talking more about in this panel. Thank you for having me.
Awesome stuff. Let's go to you next, Radek.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me as well. It's great to be here. My name is Radek Vican. I am the community manager here at Drago Entertainment. I've been working for about a year here, and today I will be talking about our gas station simulator. So,
excellent stuff. Let's go over to Pavel.
Hello, pleasure to be here. I'm a veteran of the industry. I've been working for 25 years on various types of games, mostly truck simulators these days. SCS Software is best known for, and this is our primary business now. I'm founding father of the company, but I used to be a programmer, so I approach like from engineering perspective.
Cool, awesome stuff. And we'll go over to you, Kermit.
Yes, hello, Kermit Ball. I'm a community coordinator for Giant Software for Farming Simulator out of our new US office that is hopefully going to physically be existing here in the near future at some point this year. But been with the company since last year and really excited with Farming Simulator 22 came out obviously in the fall, and more awesome things to come this year from us as well. So glad to be here.
Fantastic stuff. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for all of your introductions. It's very, very exciting. I've got a wonderful list of questions that I've got. So if I'm peering off to the side, I'm looking at some questions. And I will note for everybody watching that there are going to be links to all of the fun games and all that sort of stuff around here somewhere. I don't know where it will be, but it will be on this page somewhere. You can go and find all of the products that we're talking about today on this page. So for my first question, I guess we'll kick things off by asking essentially what your game is about, and also related to that, what job or perhaps a hobby does that title simulate? So I'm going to kick things off because I'm selfish. So Brewmaster is a first-person hobby simulation game, and it's all about home brewing of beer. Like the idea is that you are trying to learn how to brew beer and ales and stuff like that in a wonderful hobby space, and it's got this real simulation of chemistry underneath that's kind of telling the kind of beer that you're actually making. And I suppose the kind of hobby it's simulating is homebrew. It's pretty obvious, right? It's trying to do that. It's definitely not trying to be a brewery game, right? Like, because that's a very different set of parameters. A lot of that is around management and that kind of thing. So that's what Brewmaster is about. So who wants to kick things off and tell us what their simulation games are about?
I'll start because Farming Simulator, I think, is a pretty obvious one, what it's about. It's right there in the name. I'm sure that Pavel can say the same as well. But yeah, Farming Simulator, it's about farming, obviously, but more focused on like big, branded machinery, tractors and combine harvesters and everything else you need in the process of farming. And it simulates, animal husbandry as well. You can take care of animals. We now have production chains in the game, so you can take it a little bit further beyond farming, and now you can run a bakery basically and turn your grain into bread or cake or whatever it may be if you have the right ingredients.
Awesome.
I could go next. Planet Zoo, obviously, it's also in the name, is a zoo management simulator where we focus on bringing to the players the ultimate zoo simulator, essentially. In the game, you focus on all the different aspects that are required to run a zoo. So obviously you have animals that you adopt and breed, and then you get to release them to the wild as well to elevate and highlight this sort of important aspect that real life zoos do as well in species conservation. Similarly, we have the guest simulation in the game itself, where you need to make sure that you take care of all the needs of your guests. You got to provide opportunities for them to buy food, buy drinks, recover energy, go to the toilet, and you got to educate them, again highlighting this important feature that real life zoos have as well in terms of researching and being an ambassador for the different species that they exhibit. And lastly, a huge aspect of Planet Zoo as well is the creative side. So we're really trying to elevate player creativity with our piece-by-piece building system, where the players get to essentially build the zoo of their dreams, while again still highlighting real challenges that zoos face in terms of visibility of the animals, making sure that your facilities are spaced out properly throughout the zoo, and yeah, that all makes for a very authentic and fun gameplay of building a zoo.
Yeah, I can go next. So again, gas station simulator, as the name implies, is about running a gas station, but it's not only about that. We kind of went with a different approach with gas station, because not only you run your gas station, but you also have different aspects you need to take care of, including management. You also need to restore your workshop, you have warehouse. Recently we added the car wash as well. So it's really about kind of connecting all these together and kind of building your business again, because at the beginning you buy the gas station in a pretty much ruined stage, and you have to find your way and invest some money, earn that money, and again upgrade more and more into your business, so eventually you can reach the maximum level. So
Okay, let me wrap it up. Euro Truck Simulator and American Truck Simulator, the names are quite literal. Take place at the respective continents, but you basically role play the daily job of a truck driver, and there is a little bit of like business layer sprinkled on top of it, so that it's not so boring. But a lot of it is about not just truck maneuvering; it's also about exploration and using the navigation. So it's like pretty good approximation of a truck driver's responsibility along the way.
Okay. Awesome stuff. Fantastic. Well, thank you for introducing those. So, right, I want to get into some of the real meat and potatoes of all of this sort of stuff. So we're making games that are about real world things, okay? And in video games, you can make stuff that is kind of super fantastical, or you can make stuff that is, down to earth and relatable. And obviously we've chosen that other side, right? Generally, we've chosen that other side. One of the things that we did with Brewmaster is we realized that we wanted to, I hear the word authentic quite a lot coming out of this, and like real life, and I hear a lot of these, and that's one of the things that we're really keen on doing with Brewmaster. So we went and actually talked with brewers, and we went and did beer brewing qualifications, and we went and studied loads and loads and loads of stuff about home brewing, and indeed we have people who do home brewing themselves on the team, and we went and we wanted to make that in such a way. We wanted to work with those people and do that kind of level of research because we wanted to get that authenticity. We wanted to get that understanding so that we could actually, rather than just kind of like pretend we knew what that thing was, we could actually accurately represent it. So I'm going to come to you first, Pavel. Did you talk with real trucking companies? Did you talk with real truck drivers? Do you have real truck drivers playing your games? Like, how much interaction do you have with the trucking community, as it were?
Well, we absolutely do have to have close ties to the industry and to the drivers. We actually employ several people with the proper driving license. Over the years, we have been better and better at this. Initially, those many years ago, we had little idea what we are going into. These days, we have consultations. We have people really from the truck companies letting us kind of under the hood, inviting us to the factories to show us stuff, to let us record the engine sounds and give us CAD files. So there's a lot of input on the looks of the vehicles, but also on the behavior. Mm-hmm. Without the community, which is usually well more informed than we are, it would also be very hard for us. So the community also plays a fantastic role in correcting, in inspiring us.
Mm. And Kermit, is that the same with you? I mean, is it a case of like, do you have people on the team who run farms or who have history of that, or what is it that you do to kind of get that authenticity across?
Yeah, 100%. Especially in the early days, like the founders of Giants grew up around farming. Their families were farmers. We do have people with farm backgrounds on the development team as well. And of course, we also work closely with the manufacturers that are in our game, making sure that, the brands are represented in an authentic way. And we also have a lot of farmers who play our game. They come in from plowing their fields or whatever they're doing that day out in real life, come inside into the air conditioning or the heat, depending on the time of the year, and play Farming Simulator. It really blows me away how much crossover we really do have with that type of real life farmer and players of the game.
Yeah. And like the reason I bring this up obviously is Kilian, you mentioned this of like trying to get across that idea of authenticity and of conservationship. I mean, how important is that for you and your team to actually represent these things? Because of course, back in the day, there's plenty of old school sort of zoo games from way back in the day, and they didn't really bother with that kind of thing. But so is that actually important for Project Zoo?
So for Planet Zoo, it's pretty important. Yeah, we wanted to be a change in that sense, and tying up the real challenges with the whole management genre, really. So when we made Planet Zoo, we went to various different zoos like San Diego Zoo, Colchester Zoo, Chester Zoo, Shepworth Wildlife Park, to get some questions answered, or even to source material ourselves. So it's quite interesting that you brought that up, Pavel, about recording the engine noises, because our audio designers also sometimes will go to a zoo to record animal vocalizations so that we can then use them in the game. So yeah, we definitely were in contact with professional zookeepers and zoological institutions in order to accurately represent obviously the challenges that you have when you exhibit wild animals, and obviously when you then go and release them to the wild eventually, as part of species conservation. Even now, when we are in a DLC development cycle, we are in contact with a zoological researcher who still vets all the information about any new animal that we're adding to the game, just so we can be sure that everything's properly authentic and realistic in the game, really.
Yeah. And Radek, what about yourself? Like, is that something that's important for your title, or maybe it isn't important for your title?
I would say it's a bit of both. We definitely want to offer players some sort of authenticity when it comes to simulating the job we do, but we also went with sort of a funny way to introduce some activities and events, because when you manage a gas station, obviously you can imagine how it is. You have to someone get some gas. There's also people who are coming to your shop purchase products. In workshop, we did a research on repairing certain elements of a vehicles, and of course micromanaging employees and everything that is included in our game is based on how it works in real life. But also we have multiple events in the game that are just pure fun. We have, for example, I would say Party Bus, which basically is simply an event when bus comes, with people dancing with alien masks, So this, I mean, you can encounter this in real life for sure, but it's something we also wanted to show people, that even though this is a simulation of a job and how you can eventually manage your business, it also has a lot of fun aspects, Also, I would like to mention that we did look into our history, because the gas station is located on Route 66. Which also means that we included the name of the gas station, which is Dust Bowl. And for those who might not know, it's actually based on a real events that happened in 1930s. So, again, we wanted to mention and include both, the fun aspects and also the serious aspect of the business. So.
Well, that's the perfect segue into my next question, and we'll stick with you with this one, because I think it sounds like you've got quite a strong opinion on this. So obviously, because we're balancing something that is, we're taking something from real life, we're taking activities that for some people might look at them and go, why would you want to simulate that, right? Why would you want to simulate this specific thing, right? So like not to pick on you, but like why would you want to simulate running a farm, right? Why would you want to do that when it's it's a day job? So that's somebody's day job. Whereas I know, obviously, having done Brewmaster and stuff like that, the reason you want to simulate a farm or doing homebrewing or any of these other things is there's lots of really interesting stuff in here. There's lots of fun in these jobs, right? So let's stay with you then, Radek, and say, like, how do you find that balance between a kind of presenting a realism about what the job really is versus what we sort of think of as like game design, making things fun, making it so that the player is enjoying themselves. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, so again, I would refer, to what I said a few minutes ago, where I basically stated that we have a lot of aspects and micromanagement in our game that is based on a real thing. Yeah, we cannot go strictly into very deep details when it comes to managing employees or restocking your supplies for your shop, because it could get tedious and possibly the players might not enjoy it as much as they do now. But we wanted to include this kind of aspect where players can enjoy doing the job that they are given. Yeah, so you have to clean your gas station, which you would do in real life as well. You have to practically generate some income, so you can use that income to again upgrade your business and expand a little bit. So this was our approach, was to give kind of the players ideas and responsibilities that they would actually do in real life, including managing employees, giving them tasks, paying their salaries, and so on, but also give them the fun aspect, where basically if you are having a lot of work at your gas station, you suddenly see a party bus with aliens, or you see a kid living in the desert who's basically trying to ruin your gas station and ruin your business. So this balance is for us very important, because we want to offer players definitely the fun aspect, but we also want to give them kind of the feeling that it's not only fun if you would actually be owning a business. It's a lot of work you have to put in. You have to really take care of how many supplies you have. You have to keep an eye out on if everything is stocked and if everyone is paid accordingly to what you owe them, yeah, as your employees. So for us, this kind of was interesting to find a balance, but I think we did a good job with that, because players seems to definitely enjoy both the activity, the funny events, and also the management aspect of the game.
Cool. Yeah. Pavel, what about yourself? Trucking. It's a real job. It's really hard. People get paid good money for it. So how do you find that balance? How do you find that balance between realism and fun?
Well, we are well aware that a game first, we have to be accessible to kids. We cannot ask for a driving license to play our games. I've bumped into some simulators out there that I couldn't even start a vehicle because there were so many buttons to press properly in a sequence. So we have to balance things, and usually the accessibility, the simpler access to the features wins over. Even though the hardcore community would always push you towards more realism, you can layer some things, you can make them optional, but ultimately the initial experience has to be very simple, very accessible. But the job itself, I think it's exciting. The big vehicles are exciting for many kids, boys, but the exploration factor in our case is also a big draw to the genre, to our sub niche, because a lot of it in our games is about discovering places and being the hero of your decisions, where to go, what to do. So this actually draws a lot of girls into the game as well. It's not just like boys hobby. So it's always about finding the right balance and always seeking out better balance. We are never kind of finished with the work.
Awesome. So I picked on Farming Simulator earlier. So Kermit, tell me about it. How can you make tilling the soil an exciting thing to do?
Right. Well, I think the gameplay itself in Farming Simulator, people are attracted to it, even if you don't have a background in farming, because the game is kind of relaxing. And I think that real farming is probably not relaxing all the time. We do romanticize it a little bit. Like Pavel said, there is the balance for realism and also making sure that the game is fun and accessible for everyone. We too are a game that is rated, from everyone and up, basically. So we do have kids that play our game. We have adults. We have retirees who play our game. We have people of all ages, and really people that are looking for different play experiences as well. And I think our mod hub does a great job of kind of bridging that gap, where if you want more realism, you can go find more mods that will make your game more realistic. If you want to find ones that are maybe a little bit going to make things easier on you, whether it be adding money in or whatever, we encourage people to make sure that they play the game the way they want to play it, because it is a video game first, and the main goal of a video game is to have fun. Don't stress yourself out. So that's why things that add more realism, if we add them in the base game, are almost always optional. I know some people have asked for things like, crops getting diseases and natural disasters and flooding and things like that in our game. But that's something that we look at and we say, we realize why you would like this in the game, because it does add that realistic factor. But we have to weigh whether or not that would, alienate the people that want to play a different way. So we oftentimes are going with things that are optional when we're thinking about our design. And the Mod Hub is, of course, like I said, a great way because you can really tailor the game experience to be the way you want it to be.
And is that, Kilian, is that something that you have to keep in mind as well? Is like, are there feature requests that come in from people where it's like, oh, I really want this super high-end level of realism, but you're like, oh, do you? Like, is that something that you have to deal with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll definitely echo the sentiment of making sure that the game is still fun while retaining, obviously, the authentic experience of, in our case, running a zoo. So there's a few things where we had to make adjustments. Obviously, real-life zookeeping is an incredibly complex and detailed topic, and we just have to condense some systems in order to keep the experience fun and moving forward. So, for instance, we definitely do adjust the reproduction data of our animals in the game. So obviously, breeding animals is a huge part of Planet Zoo. But while a real-life keeper would easily be able to manage saltwater crocodiles spawning dozens of tiny baby crocodiles every year, it gets overwhelming for the player, especially since they need to take care of all the other species at the same time as well. So it's just finding this level of something that's manageable for the player while still, presenting unique challenges per species, for instance. And, the disease system is another thing for us. The diseases in Planet Zoo are a very high-level indicator, just that, something's gone wrong in your habitat and you got to go and fix it. But we're not going into this detailed simulation of, okay, this disease does that, this one isn't curable, this one even infects guests, etc. We just want to make sure that the players have something to do, but not necessarily just going all the way into a very detailed system that might just go beyond the scope or might not be interesting to all of our players.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to echo that, that's definitely the same with Brewmaster as well. Like one of the things that we found when we were putting the game together is, bibbering really is an absolutely fascinating subject, and it is this strange mix of sort of artistry and chemistry, and that's this thing that I think is kind of, that's one of the things that really appeals to me about that as a hobby. And we have this real simulation of chemistry running in the background, right? So there's, it's not just a simple, it's not like a Minecraft where you take a block of hops and a block of malt and you put them together with a block of water and it makes a beer, right? It's not like that. It's there's different kinds of malts, there's different kinds of different amounts of ingredients and that kind of thing. So there's quite a lot of depth and going on, and the chemistry simulation that's going on behind the hood is really quite in depth, but we never present a sort of formula. We never present like, this is the scientific equation that means that we're doing this stuff, because really, for us, like abstracting that out just a little bit and saying, you don't really need to know about how all of these different molecules work together, even though the idea of that stuff is happening underneath, it means that you can lower the barrier to entry for that kind of a hobby, which it sounds to me like this seems to be like a bit of a trend for all of our things. It's about lowering that barrier to entry to give a sample and a taste of the thing that you're trying to simulate. You're not necessarily trying to go to the end, you're not trying to do like super high-end NASA simulations, right? Because that's not really that fun, because so one of the things that one of the games that was going to be on this panel, but unfortunately they couldn't make it, was a game called Project Hospital. They're not able to join us for this panel. However, they have sent us over a quote about their game and about what their game is, and I'm going to read it out because I think it's really interesting. Just FYI, so Project Hospital is a simulation game in which you build a hospital and you manage the staff and you diagnose and you treat patients as you would expect. Again, the clue is in the name. So they sent us over this quote, which is, while Project Hospital has a very deep simulation level and can be really useful to learn, for example, about different departments and which diagnoses they treat, real-life medicine is way too complex and serious a topic for a game to be really used as a teaching tool. I'd like to get to that at some point soon. Also, from the game design perspective, we had to make a significant number of adjustments to, for example, which symptoms are assigned to which medical conditions and how often they occur, the duration of different procedures and lab tests and more. This was necessary to reach a fun level of play and challenging gameplay and a proper game balance. But being less serious, we hope that nobody had the idea to use the game to diagnose themselves, which is fair enough. And I think that's really something that I kind of want to get onto next. So my core question is this, and I'm going to come to you separately about this. What kind of people do you see playing your game, and why do you think they play that game? And have you found that people will play your game in order to learn more about the job or the hobby it simulates? And one of the things that Project Hospital, the representative from Project Hospital, kind of points out here is, for them, they didn't feel like it was a good teaching tool. It was just too complex in medicine to kind of use as a teaching tool. And I think that's obviously completely fair. Again, kind of talking a little bit about Brewmaster, we're using real recipes. You can take a recipe from a recipe book off of your shelf and you can put it into the game. You can make a beer and it'll be that beer, right? Like that's, so you can use that system to actually teach yourself how to brew beers. And from our perspective, we find that teaching people through mechanics like these, we have another game, Mars Horizon, that teaches people about generally how a space agency is run. So we find that there is some level of teaching going on, but it's not an edutainment title, right? Like, I'm sure most of us are probably old enough to remember edutainment titles like, you know, Mario is missing and all that nonsense, where it was kind of, it was the learning that was important, not the play, right? Whereas we feel when we're making games that have real world elements, really it's about the play first and the learning second. The example I always like to use of another company is Assassin's Creed. I can walk around Rome now and I know where everything is, right? I know what that is because I've played Assassin's Creed, right? So and it's the same with Brewmaster. I can now do some level of homebrewing. I know the theory behind homebrewing and I've learned a whole bunch about it. But I want to talk about you folks. Let's start with you first, Kermit. Like, is this something that you can go and learn about? You know, do people use your game to actually learn about farming?
Yeah, 100%. We see like a wide variety of people that play our game, like I said earlier, but there are those who are either already farming or those that are interested in getting into farming. The people that are already doing it use Farming Simulator as like a dream fantasy shop, if you will. Like maybe they want to buy a new tractor, but they don't want to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars it will take to get it without first, you know, checking out what it looks like, how it operates within the game. So people use it that way. The greatest example, though, I think, of people that play Farming Simulator and have, you know, used it as a tool to learn how to do the job of farming is a guy by the name of Grant from the squad. He's a YouTuber, and he started out as a teenager doing YouTube videos with Farming Simulator, and some of them are more on the realistic side of farming. Some of them are just, you know, him letting loose and having fun with his friends and doing crazy role play within Farming Simulator. But now he has become a first generation farmer. He took his knowledge from growing up in Iowa around farming, but never really directly being involved in it. And he kind of grew his community around his YouTube videos for Farm Sim and started to find people that had similar interests to him. And he said that he was really encouraged by the people from his community and the people that he met that really had the same kind of passion for agriculture that he did. So he started out just last year. He bought 370 acres. He's bought all the equipment he needs. He's now started a separate YouTube where he does real life farming as well. And he's really like learning the process of how to do it in real life now after, you know, learning how to do it within the game. He said that the biggest thing about Farm Sim that helped encourage him like how to get into real life farming was like the community aspect that I mentioned, and the ability to go in and try things that maybe he would never get a chance to do as well. And he definitely said that his interest in farming increased because of playing Farm Sim, because of those connections with the people, and it built his passion. And it's not something that happens often in agriculture. The average age of a farmer is going up and up and up, and lots of families, they're either not having kids to pass it on to, or their kids are going on to do other things. And so the future of farming is kind of in question because the average age is going up. So it's great to see just, you know, him and maybe a few others, if they can get inspired and become a farmer out of it, then by all means, that's pretty awesome in my eyes.
I'm pretty confident that person must be the ultimate pro gamer at this point. Really, you know, that's pretty incredible. That's amazing stuff. Kilian, what about yourself? Like, is it something that people learn from?
So to an extent, for sure, definitely. So like with Farming Simulator, our community is very diverse, and people come to the game from all demographics and for all different reasons, learning about the animals for management, just for the creative side, or because they have a passion for zoos. And we find that often people will tell us, well, I really enjoyed learning about this new species, or I didn't even know that this species existed before until you brought it into the game and let me have a look at it. We do have a feature in the game that's called the Zoopedia, which is something where we do have little bits of information about every species that we do have in our animal roster. So I think Planet Zoo is a great way as an introduction to zookeeping, or generally as an introduction on learning about the animals themselves. But obviously, we do have to make sure that everyone in the community and everyone who's playing our game is included in this whole experience.
Yeah. Radek, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think that Gas Station Simulator is for all generations of gamers, honestly. We've been on PGA event here in Poland, and there was a little girl that basically told us that she likes the cleaning, the brooming, but that she doesn't like taking off the trash because it reminds her what she does at home. And this really is a nice interaction what we encountered, and it really tells us that this is something that is for all audiences and all gamers, no matter the age. Another example great is an article that was something, the title was something like, I am playing, my wife is playing, and my kids are playing as well. So, again, I kind of want to shine light on the thing that I think that it is for all generations.
Yeah.
And I think that the younger generation can learn certain things from the game for sure. I think that they can understand the importance of responsibilities, that you need to kind of take care of your business, you need to take care of your like items, supplies in shop, and again, managing the business bit by bit while still having fun. The older generations, they also might take a look at this in a way how it'd be to own a business. So I really think it varies quite a lot from age to age, but I think that the game can give an idea what it actually means if you have certain employees, that you need to take care of. And again, there's a lot of aspects of the businesses that you own. It's not only gas station, but you also own a warehouse, workshop, and a car wash. So, it kind of gives an idea how it can work in real life. But again, we didn't want to make it exactly as in real life to kind of leave the aspect of fun. So.
Right. So you're not really simulating. Well, you're not really learning about how to pump gas and that kind of thing. But it's more of a sort of like small business simulation, right? It's like learning the responsibilities of those kinds of things. Yeah.
I mean, I think people can imagine how it is to pump a gas into your car. It's not something that you need to specifically teach someone. I think everybody can understand that. Also, the brooming or cleaning part. It's not something that you need to learn in that stage, but it is also about managing your business. You work with multiple supplies, items. You own shop and workshop. Both need to be supplied with spare parts. So this is something that you need to keep an eye out. Because if you don't, you will realize that you're losing money basically because you can't provide.
Yeah. And Pavel, what about yourself?
Well, over the years, we have received actually many emails and stories how people used our games as inspiration for picking or changing a career, and also some success stories about people acing their driving license test, the practical part at least, because they managed to develop some sort of brain pathways for backing the trailer, the articulated truck and trailer, into a tight spot. So I think on the micro level, our game can teach a lot. It's very related to the actual maneuvering of the vehicle, but also there are additional layers. Like you can teach people something about geography through our game because there are all these relatively comparably similar cities and destinations in the game world. You can teach people even the elements of basic driving, like that you need to follow the rules, like the speed is forced in our game. You shouldn't be speeding. So learning to switch between looking at the dashboard and looking at the world around you. This is not just for truckers. It's for a skill for everybody to be aware of, to learn, to acquire.
Yeah.
So we think that our game is quite relevant to actually educating people, educating the wannabe truckers. And we also hear back from the industry that they use our game sometimes as an inspiration. We are just about giving some 1,000 keys to an institution that's teaching drivers, like kids basically, that are coming to the age as an inspirational tool. So in many ways, our game is maybe fortunate in being really close to the everyday like micro of the truck driver's life.
Yeah, that's a great point. So okay, I'm going to come to Kilian next with my next question to begin with, and what I want to kind of find out is, what do we think? Obviously, the way that we decide to make games is varied, but we've all made an active decision to make the specific games that we're making, and part of that process is about figuring out, making sure that there's an appeal of some kind, right? You don't want to make a thing for for an audience that just doesn't exist. And clearly, these kinds of simulation games, these kinds of games that have connections with the real world, they're incredibly popular. They are, there are games that do absolutely silly numbers, and have huge audiences of very, very invested fans. So, Kilian, I'm coming to you first with this one, and I guess what I want to kind of find out from you is, what do you think it is? What is the appeal of these kinds of games? What is the actual? Why do people want to play these games?
Yeah, so I think, and I think it was mentioned before already, is that simulators definitely have a low barrier of entry than just actually having to pick up a new hobby, invest into the materials for that, or changing your career, or first pursuing an education to do that. And obviously, it's this type of curiosity and escapism as well, being able to experience just something that you may not be able to in your current situation or in your day-to-day life. And simulators are fairly easy to pick up, and just give you an insight into these kind of worlds, these kinds of like hobbies or jobs. For Planet Zoo specifically, I think obviously we kind of simultaneously simulate the hobby of going to zoos and experiencing the animals, as well as the business management side of things, of running the whole zoo and managing all of these different aspects. But yeah, what I think would be really cool to highlight is also that during the heights of the COVID pandemic, for instance, when most of the real life zoos were obviously closed to protect their staff and their animals, we've got lots of positive feedback from players who use the game to, not be deprived of their zoo experience, and just being able to still view some animals, and having that whole experience of looking at a nice zoo and a nice park. And even outside of that, people often go like, oh, I love going to my local zoos, but they don't exhibit this species or that one, but you have it in the game, so I really enjoy looking at the virtual zoos, at least the virtual variant of this animal. In the situation.
Yeah. Radek, what about yourself? Is that a similar story, you think? Is that why that kind of game gets made? Is that the kind of appeal?
I think we can all agree probably that this is pretty accurate. It's people want to experience something new, and maybe they don't have the resources to do so. I also think that the major part is playing, trying to kind of relax from your real life. You have responsibilities, you have a job, and maybe you want to try to manage your gas station, or do whatever else. So maybe this is, in my opinion, something that people play the games for, specifically simulators, to kind of try out how it would be to manage a business, or, own a farm or something. It's basically, I don't want to say escape from reality, but in some way, I think it's kind of okay. Just take a break, relax, and just play this and that to kind of feel cool again. Also, I agree with the pandemic right now. It was a horrible situation. People were isolated from each other, and I think this kind of brought the players together, kind of to try new things. To experience something new, and I really think that's a good thing. What we do when it comes to this, to kind of give players kind of more opportunities and possibilities to experience how it would be to be in a different place. So
yeah. And Pavel, is that you've mentioned kind of things about that before, about finding new places and connecting with other people. Do you agree with him? Is that a big part of the appeal? Is that the major part of the appeal?
I think generally the appeal of simulation is that it's like calming. It's like a zen kind of thing, often for a job simulation, rather than shooting, action oriented or competing. It's usually supposedly mundane and boring, but in fact, you are seeing the job getting done. You are succeeding in a situation that you can relate to from your normal life. So for many people, this form of escapism may be more attractive than escape into some kind of conflict or something that they will get their heartbeat raised. Here they are chilling out. So also in our case, I think that's a lot of the big appeal is really just driving into the sunset and enjoying the countryside and knowing that another cargo is about to be delivered. Then go one more cargo or one more delivery. So it's the same as every game. You need to have a hook, but ultimately the hook is like happening mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And Kermit, I think you mentioned something about relaxing and that kind of thing. I can see you nodding there. Like, is that the same? Do you think that's the same appeal as well? Is it just about being calming?
Yeah, I think the three other guys that just answered this before me have kind of nailed it. And I think that COVID was mentioned by a couple of them before as well. And I think that was something we saw in between the versions of our game. 22 just came out in the fall, but we took a 3-year cycle this time. And so COVID kind of hit like in the middle of this. And we saw an uptick of people that hadn't really played our game before, or people that had played and came back to it, because it is that form of just escapism, and it is very relaxing. I know that a lot of people have sent us messages and said, hey, I'm a veteran, or I have some other sort of PTSD, and Farming Simulator helps, relax me at the end of the day. I think the appeal of our game is that it's not like a shooter game. Like, it's not a game you can necessarily lose at. You're not being chased by the killer and having to escape. Pavel, I think, mentioned that like heart racing kind of game. It's not that kind of game. It's a game that there's always something to do, though. Like, it's a relaxing game, but there's always something else to do. Like Pavel said, the next cargo for us, it's what needs done in my field next, or what do I need to get to my animals as far as feed now. There's always something that you move on to after you finish something else. So I feel like that keeps people engaged as well while being relaxing. And I think that is, a part of the huge appeal for our game, because you can just get in, relax, play a game that's not stressful, but also feel like you're accomplishing something. Maybe you start from the ground level with hardly any money and one tractor and a plow, and you start from there, and you have to work contracts for our AI farmers on the map or whatever it may be. That's how some people play it, and there's always something to do after you finish something else, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm so glad that we're all agreed on this, because that's definitely what we're making as well. So, phew. It's relaxation, right? Like, it's for us, it's that thing of, I think it would be disingenuous to have a hobby thing be super intense, or to have something that it's kind of, the way I like to think of it is, it's kind of escaping from one reality but going to another reality. It's that. I don't want to. It's not a power fantasy, but it is a fantasy of like, I could be a farmer, I could be a truck driver, right? Like, I could do all of these different things, right? Like, and I think that there's a genuine, there's a sort of youthful playfulness with that comes along, where, when I was young, I was like, I'd like to be an astronaut or a firefighter, and it's getting that idea of how does that roughly feel, right? Like, I definitely don't want to go and be a firefighter, because that's scary, but like, I'd like to understand the general feeling of it. What is it like to rescue somebody? What is it like to kind of have to deal with a fire? So I think that all of that stuff is I'm very glad to hear that that's kind of what we think the thing is. I don't know how long we've got left, but I've got a few more questions that I've been kind of putting together. So I'm going to ask some very challenging questions, and I will preface all of this with this is not something that anybody is talking about. This is announcements or anything like that. But one of my questions is, I'd like to know, what are the fantasy games that you would like to be able to make, the fantasy simulation games or even just a simulation or a real world activity that you think would be a really good thing to try and simulate in a video game. And I will say, caveat, these are not announcements or anything like that. So I'll start things off. I think having some sort of like really small scale, like Zen garden simulator. I think like being able to like grow the really analytical idea of how you would grow out a little plant, that for example, like, and just choosing the exact thing and putting it out in the right thing. I think there'd be something really chill and cool about that. But I'm kind of interested in hearing if anybody's got any things that they're like, oh, somebody should do this. And people in the backgrounds are looking at their marketing managers going, can I say anything around this?
I mean, I guess I could go, but again, from a purely personal perspective, obviously,
Sure.
I'm a huge horse nerd. I love horses, but there's definitely a lack of horse games out there.
I
And I'd
agree.
actually love to play some sort of, I don't know, horse racing management simulator that does this spin of the whole sports manager genre with the whole, animal welfare aspect and the multi-generational stable stuff. I'd love to play that one.
Yeah. Anybody else brave enough?
I'm brave enough to say I'd check out that game Kilian just mentioned. That sounds like fun.
Perfect.
It does sound good, doesn't it? Do you know what? After this call, we'll all go and figure it out. We'll go and figure out who we need to talk to. Another one is we talked a little bit about player requests, and player feedback these days is really, really important. What's the Pavel? What's the kind of like oddest player request that you've had for your game? What's the thing where you've gone, oh, maybe?
I don't know if it's the oddest, but many people actually want to live in your game world. They want to go shopping. They want to own houses. Or you know it, a job simulator comes up, life simulator for them. They want to manage their, food and to going to the bathroom, because that's what, the 24-hour cycle would normally be. So many people go insane go hardcore about a simulation and want to simulate, all of your life in it. So this is kind of like a fantasy that we hear often.
Yeah, absolutely. What about yourself, Radek?
I have to agree with Pavel. I think this is also in our case. People would like to have more opportunities, like go to the city, buy a house, and have more options. And this is kind of also to your previous question, Peter, when you ask, what game would be crazy cool to create. And I think this is probably the question that everybody kind of tried to tackle before is can we have some real life simulation where you can go to work and do these things? So to answer your previous question, I think this is something that would be interesting, but definitely difficult to make. But when it comes to really odd requests, I think I remember that we have a party bus in our game, and in the party bus you get a bunch of customers dancing with alien masks, and they go and storm your shop and buy a lot of supplies, a lot of items and food. And someone said that we can do the same thing with a clown car, but basically it would be a super small car. Yeah, and the clown would just start jumping out, like a lot of them, from this really tiny small car. So this is something that I really remember, and it's a very interesting idea, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Kilian, what about yourself? What about your community?
So our community is absolutely lovely and super active in requesting new animals or features basically daily. And obviously we're still in development with the project. And there's nothing I could pinpoint as super odd, really. We do sometimes get the request for fantasy creatures, and Planet Zoo is obviously very much focused on the real life conservation of animals. So yeah, I do find the idea quite endearing, if maybe a little odd, that players might be going around and releasing hordes of fantasy creatures into the wild in the prospect of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Kermit, what about yourself?
I think I mentioned earlier that we do have a lot of people that role play within farming simulators. So one that we hear a lot is like, are you guys going to add police vehicles or fire trucks or things like that? Because people want to role play within the farming simulator world of being more than just a farmer. So of course, our game is farming simulators. So that is what we place the importance on, but we have so many role players that have this passion that they just want to do more. They want to be able to have more equipment and be able to act out, living out an entire life centered around the town and not have it just be farming focused only.
Yeah, one of the interesting ones that we've got, and obviously the game is still very much in development. One of the interesting things that we saw when we put an alpha out was obviously, because we have this chemical simulation that's running underneath the hood, we had members of our community, very creative members of our community, try and make bread. because all of the ingredients exist, right? And like, and that was this moment where it was kind of like, this is really interesting. There's something, you all touch upon this idea of simulating more of the world, right? Like pushing the boundaries of where that simulation ends, right? And what more can you do? We want to live in this world a little bit, and I think there's some really interesting stuff happening at the moment around that kind of thing. And I think particularly with simulations, it's really interesting to see how far can you push the simulation to actually understand, what can you do that would be either extremely dangerous to try in real life, or how far can you push the sort of like ones and zeros that are underneath the hood, actually figuring all this sort of stuff out. So with about 10 minutes left, I kind of want to talk about, this is all a bit inside baseball when it comes to sort of games industry stuff, but why is it that we think that these hobby and job simulation games, why is it do we think that these games are increasing over time? Sort of mentioned earlier, there were games back in the day like Theme Park, many an hour trying to get people to vomit playing Theme Park, but those did exist and they were fine, but they weren't really trying particularly hard to kind of simulate what the real thing was, right? And then we had simulation games that were kind of like, flight sim and things along those lines that were getting kind of closer. And then we've seen the last, I would say 5 to 10 years, maybe, just an explosion of simulation games that are trying to simulate things that are close to real life jobs or hobbies or those kinds of things. What I'm trying to figure out, and I don't know what this is. Why is it that this sort of genre has broken out? Like, what is it that we think? I'm going to come to you, Kermit, for kind of a first try at this one. What is it about this kind of genre of games that you think has meant that it's become more popular?
Well, obviously, we mentioned the relaxing part of it, but going beyond that, I feel like people are just searching for like a new experience when it comes to gaming, and I feel like there's a newer like generation of gamers, but also the first generation of gamers, maybe those my age or slightly older, where like we started to have home consoles and home PCs where we could start playing games. I think that we've seen, so many different types of games come along over the years that almost, I think people that are drawn to simulation are just seeking a different experience than, your run of the mill shooter or whatever it may be. It's not like we're saying simulation games are the most popular, but I think it does kind of lend itself to an audience that is, seeking some sort of different experience, something they can really get involved in and play for not just, 60 hours and then the game's over. It's a game that you can continuously put time into over and over and maybe come back to later on and pick up right where you left off and continue your journey as a farmer or a gas station owner or a truck driver or a zoologist or whatever it may be. So I think that's part of it for sure.
And I can see you nodding there, Pavel. Is that your agreement as well? Because obviously, Euro Truck was a big part of that first, explosion, I would say.
The popularity is growing with the fidelity of the simulation, with the looks of the simulation. 20 years ago on an 8-bit computer, you can talk really about simulating things. It was all just a toy. These days, it's way more believable, so it's way more attractive to people just based on the looks. Also, the general population is more open to playing games. It used to be a kids thing. Now these kids are older, maybe even senior people, and they look at something else to expand their horizon. They may be fed up with shooters. They may look into something new and fresh and, again, calming. So in many ways, we are maybe, rediscovering the lapsed gamers with Sims. And also, it's like a hobby. It's not something that you get necessarily satisfied with, like complete. It's something that you can come back every year, do a little bit of this hobby, and then, get to, once again next year, get another fix. So in this sense, the category is growing maybe slightly over the market growth overall because there are only so many shooters you can play, but this is different. This is a different aspect. This is less power. Fantasy is still fantasy, as you said. But the 60-year-olds that play our games, definitely wouldn't have anything to do with computers or consoles or anything only a generation ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that your take too, Kilian? Is it something to do with power in terms of computing power and fidelity, plus a kind of a new audience? Is that where you kind of see that coming from, that audience coming from?
It certainly helps the simulators. Obviously, we have more bandwidth and making something more with more detail and more fidelity. I also think, obviously, we touched upon the success stories and the feel of accomplishment that comes with simulators. Obviously, it's very gratifying to just go and hop in a simulator and do a few tasks and then go again because you've done something alongside with the whole escapism thing. I've done something that I actually couldn't do in real life, of course. And I think an additional thing that simulators really benefit from is that they really provide an opportunity for all the players to connect over it. So, we see that in our forums, and I think that's a similar experience in other simulators as well, is that, our players are people that work in the field or, pursue this hobby outside of the game, and then people start exchanging their knowledge and their takes on the hobby and the job outside of the game, and it really is a nice thing to connect over. And I think that just boosts the popularity of simulators to the outside world, really.
Yeah. And Radek, what about yourself?
Yeah, I can agree with what was said. I think simulators are very unique games because each simulator simulates something different, and I really think that people want to try as many things as they can possibly. And we're back again to the topic that they might not have the resources, and that's why they want to try it. And the game development is moving forward. The quality is getting better and better. And people want more. We right now also release a demo of Food Truck Simulator, and we already see people really wanting more and more. Always coming and trying to kind of give their ideas. We have a wonderful community that always shares ideas, and just from strictly speaking from this, like the flow of their ideas, what they suggest, and everything is something that really it makes you think. Those people really want to try as many things as possible. Eventually, different jobs, different hobbies, and it's something that I think is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. Well, I think we've pretty much run out of time. So, what remains is for me to say thank you ever so much to my incredible panel that has joined me for SimFest. For this panel about whether or not hobby sims can teach you a job, and I think the thing we've kind of come to the end conclusion on is well, first of all, simulation games are awesome. They are continuing to grow, and they offer a lovely, peaceful experience. And we can learn something about the things that we're trying to simulate. But at the end of the day, we're still trying to make games. We're trying to still make something that's fun and enjoyable for a wide audience. And so I've certainly learned a lot. So I just want to say yes, thank you ever so much to everybody here for joining me for this one. Links to you watching this. Links, they're all around us. My goodness, you're right here watching it, so you can see the links. I don't know where they are, but go and have a look at all of these wonderful people's games. They've worked incredibly hard on them. Go and chuck them into your library, because they are absolutely fantastic examples of simulation games, and you might even learn something out of it, which would be great fun. And you can also go ahead and wishlist anything that's not out, and that always helps us developers out. So there we are. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll move on to whatever's coming next for SimFest. Ooh, exciting.